In this episode of The Architect of Resilience, we step into the world of footwear innovation with Stuart Jenkins, serial inventor and founder of Blue Mocha, and one of the most disruptive thinkers in the performance gear space. Stuart isn't just a guy who knows shoes. He spent the last 5 decades redefining them with over 100 patents, roles at brands like Reebok, Hoka, and New Balance. And now, his most radical mission yet: turning discarded shoe foam into high-performance insoles that make athletes faster, more stable, and more connected to the ground, all while helping clean up the industry's waste problem. In other words, resilience for your body and the planet. In this episode, we get into: what do 94 rejections, a butcher knife, and the first Nike Air shoe have in common? Stuart's story, and it's wild. How recycled foam from discarded midsoles is outperforming the premium insoles in top-tier athletic shoes by 20 times in level of durability. The real reason most athletes are leaking power, and how your foot slipping inside your shoe could be sabotaging your performance. Why elite pitchers, NFL combine trainees, and MLB hitters are switching quietly to Blue Mocha with zero endorsement deal. How improper foot contact and stability can subtly reduce velocity, force output, and resilience up the chain, and what you can do to fix it instantly. Plus, why sustainable performance gear isn't a compromise, it's the future. So if you care about performance from the ground up, this episode will shift how you think about your footwear and maybe your footprint. Welcome, Stuart Jenkins, to this episode of the Architect of Resilience podcast. He is the CEO and founder of Blumaka Insoles, which we're going to get into. Had the pleasure of meeting Stuart, it's about a year ago now, but I've been using his products for quite some time. It is it's really the only upgrade to the barefoot shoe product line, and I just absolutely love them. So Stuart has been a innovator in the footwear space for, I believe, 4.5 decades. Yeah, probably over 100 patents, worked with God knows how many different shoe brands. So welcome to the show, Stuart.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here. It's for a pencil neck geek runner to hang out with the guys that can lift some pounds. It's always a treat.
Well, I know you're used to hanging around some of those corn-fed gentlemen from Nebraska where you grew up, right? So,
yeah, some of the toughest, strongest people I ever met were farmers and ranchers. I mean, my dad, I remember trying to put a weight on a John Deere tractor one winter day in the middle of a blizzard, and he told me to pick it up, and I go over there with 2 hands and try to pick it up, and he's kind of looking at me, and he just reaches over with one hand and grabs it and puts it on. I'm like, oh my God. Here I am in college, and this guy's 70 years old and just grabs this weight and shoves it on.
There's nothing
they're
like
tough.
that farm boy strength. That's for sure.
Those guys they know about leverage, let me tell you.
Yeah. So how did you become a footwear innovator? What was that path?
Well, I became a runner, and, back in the day, you'd go to a local race and you'd win your division or something. They'd give you a free pair of shoes. Now, trust me, they weren't giving away from the local retail store the things that were selling out. So they were kind of probably clearing out the back of the closet. And I would notice that, you were poor enough, if you got a free pair of shoes, you ran in them. You didn't go, oh, well, that's not my brand. Oh, that didn't fit. This is a little too this. No, you take what they give you. And I remember getting a pair of Adidas shoes, and they were just stiffer than a board. And I just go into my mom's kitchen, steal her butcher knife, and start slicing the soles. So I put flex grooves in them. And then with the old LDVs, the Achilles tab would always create a blister when you first got them. So I said, well, the hell with this. I just took scissors and cut it off. And so I just started modifying my shoes. If a shoe was too hard, I'd just go out in the shop and drill holes in the foam and relieve some of the pressure. And it worked a lot better that way. And so, you're 14, 15 years old, and I guess necessity is the mother of invention. But I think one thing sometimes we think we can do too much and sometimes we think we can do too little. And for whatever reason, I just felt like, hey, if the shoe's not working, fix it. And I thought that experience running hundreds and hundreds of miles, I guess I felt like I was an expert enough to modify my own shoes. And then I got really lucky. I was looking to be the youngest guy to run across the United States. I'd read a book by John Steinbeck called Travels with Charlie, and I wanted to sort of replicate that. And I was looking for a sponsor. And of course, I didn't know what I was doing. I was 17 years old, and a friend of a friend introduced me to this guy who was an inventor. He had invented one-handled water faucets. So instead of, hot and cold, the mixing valve, he called it. He was working on a shoe, and he said, well, my shoe won't make it across the street, let alone across the country. Maybe you could help me. And right over my head, right there, is the air shoe that we started developing in 1977. This is before Nike Air, and we moved the air from the heel to the ball of the foot through a channel. And so I was really lucky to hook up with this gentleman. And 18 years old, every day I would build a pair of shoes in his little shoe repair shop. I'd go out and run in them. Things I liked, and then I'd tear them apart and build another pair, let them glue up overnight, and tear them apart and glue up overnight and tear them apart. And so that got me into the footwear business, and I was lucky enough that I called on 94 shoe companies with that idea. Where is it? Right there.
Yep.
And 94 shoe companies turned me down, told me it would never sell. And then Reebok licensed it, and we sold about 40 million pair. And I went from being the footwear village idiot to the footwear genius. And I didn't think I'd change too much, but I met a lot of people in the footwear industry. And in that process, I was the first college intern at Nike. I wrote Phil Knight a letter. I still have the letter. They hired me as an intern and went and worked for Jim Davis, the owner of New Balance. Jim Davis, what a wonderful guy, and worked one summer for him and just started learning the industry that way.
Yeah, I want to dive a little bit on a tangent here because we're talking about resilience, and I think that feeds a lot into determination and follow through. And you're talking about your first project and you got turned down nearly 100 times. What kept you confident or going in that process? And where did you learn that from?
Well, there's a couple questions packed into that, Chris. I think to be an innovator, it's that combination of great confidence rarely comes unless you have humility. It's hard to be confident without humility. And it was the confidence in my own experience running and testing that shoe. I knew it worked. I could feel it. And Rob Strasser up at Nike, he said, I'm not going to buy your product, but he said, you're going to make a lot of money because you can see it, feel it, and touch it. And if you can see it, feel it, and touch it, you can sell it. While everybody else was trying to make me hide the air pockets that protruded out from the shoe.
I remember when those came out too. That was, I was young. I was born in 77. So yes, I remember in the 80s when the air pocket shoe came out.
Yeah. And so I had this confidence in the idea. And I think that confidence in the experience led me to continue, if you will. I think the other thing is that in life, people think that peer pressure is only in schools. Well, peer pressure in corporations is worse than in school. Everybody wants to be the cool kid. Nobody wants to do what nobody else has done. And I think I never had a problem just being the guy that did his thing. I've been a guy that I don't drink alcohol. I don't have some moral reason not to drink alcohol, but it's not my thing. And I've never felt pressured to fit in or whatever. And I think innovation, if you want to have a good background for being an innovator, be the most unpopular guy in middle school and be okay with it. I think for the persistence, I've often joked that I wish I knew the line between professional persistence and stupid stubbornness. And I think a lot of inventors, they will get on something and they just will not give up on it. They'll mortgage their house, they'll quit their job. I understood that while I was working on that invention, I had to make a living for myself and do other things. And so there was a balance there. But as far as the not giving up, I think growing up on a ranch is probably where I learned that. You get up every day and you feed the cattle. You deal with it. Life's not fair. You grow a great crop of corn and a hailstorm comes along in late August and ruins it, or you have some great calves and You lose 4 or 5 of them because they get sick and die. And, my family's been out there ranching now 149 years. And I think it teaches you that if you stick with something, you care for something, it's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be fun. It's not always going to be sunny and 65. But you keep at it. But I don't, a lot of people, why did 94 shoe companies, these were experts. I guess I was confident enough to believe the experts were wrong and humble enough to keep going, but I didn't put too much faith in the experts. I mean, when Hoka, I know you're not a Hoka guy, you're the opposite of a Hoka guy, but
Yep.
People told me nobody's going to wear that. I said, well, I think they are. So you have to be a little bit contrarian, but I guess I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's kind of my experience.
That was really great perspective. I appreciated hearing that. I think our audience will as well. Have you continued to experience similar type, experiences? I know that you've been kind of an outsider in the shoe industry. So you've had these opportunities to go work for these big brands, but you've continued to kind of do your thing off to the side, more of a licensing or wherever approach. I'm assuming that you've continued to kind of bring about some innovation that gets questioned at times. I'm sure that that's probably the case with Blue Mocha as well, as you've gotten started with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I think often the word visionary comes in play with innovators. You look at a great innovator like an Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, and people say, well, they're visionaries. And really, the truth is visionaries cannot see around corners or over hills, but visionaries generally see the truth a little bit in advance of others. And I think that if you're going to innovate, you have to do things that haven't been done. And the question is your vision a little bit in advance of others, or is it just a bloomin' crazy idea? And so this idea that you can take waste foam. Let me just grab this, by the way.
Well, it's like, but while you're grabbing that, when we're talking about resilience, we're talking resilience of body and mind. We'll talk about how this impacts the body, but you're impacting resilience of the planet to some level because the shoe industry is not very environmentally friendly when I put my hippie hat on, right? Which is, I hate waste. I absolutely despise waste. Yeah, it's an industry and I'm involved in an industry that is, not great with that. So, I'll leave that as a lead in. That wasn't really a question.
Well, but that's the conundrum. You love it and you hate one aspect of it, right? And you can get your hippie hat on and go protest, or you can do something. And Peter Moore, the great designer, for Nike, the Jordan, and then did the equipment line for Adidas, he always used to say that the problem is the solution. This is what the footwear industry is throwing away. Can you see the shoe cut out of there?
Yep.
So they cut the shoe out. Now, do you think that this foam that they made the shoe out of is any better than this foam that they threw away?
Well, it's the exact same foam.
Exact same foam. It's beautiful foam. It's great foam. But you know what? They throw enough of this foam away every year for me to make 5 billion insoles that will last 1,000 miles, which is 20 times longer than the insoles or more that they're putting in all of these shoes that we love to buy.
So you're using the same foam, but you're making an insole out of it from waste that's better than their insole. How is that?
Well, that's the transmogrification process. First, we chop it up. You see that?
Yep. So for our listeners, he's got the old mason jar filled up with a bunch of chopped up foam.
Yep. And then you see the product. You can see the scraps right in it.
Yep.
And so think of us as making Rice Krispie treats. This waste foam that we chop up is the Rice Krispies. You don't need to cook it. You don't need to invent it. You've got all of this waste foam. And then we have to add the sugar to put it back together so that the Rice Krispies treats stick together. So we have our own proprietary formula. It's another foam. It's a polyurethane-based foam. And it takes all of these little granules that we've chopped up and it coats them in a skin of new foam and sticks them together. But 85% of the insoles that you love, and I'm glad you love them too, Anthony, by volume is this foam. So the cushioning under your foot is 85% this recycled foam. And when most people are making insoles, they aren't using the quality of the foam that shoe companies use to make midsoles. They're making a lower quality foam. We have tested insoles from $200 running shoes from the biggest and best running brands in the world. And those insoles, the cushioning in those insoles fail in 4 miles, as little as 4 miles. Most of them do not go past 25 miles.
Wow. And how long do yours last?
We guarantee them for 1,000 miles. I actually have an insole here, and people make claims. I'm holding up this insole that see these circles in it. A 260-pound marathon runner said, "I want to hold you to your guarantee. I love your insoles. They're great." He put 800 miles on them. 265-pound marathon runner. Not your average bear. I took that right in the middle of the circle. I took it to the testing lab Helix and measured the cushioning. We had maintained 93% of our cushioning after 800 miles on a 265-pound marathon. So we've tested to almost 1,500 miles, but we guarantee 1,000 miles. So not only do we provide better cushioning, 17% more than the database, 12% better energy return, and we last 1,000 miles. How long have you had your insoles, Chris? And I'll bet they're not worn out.
I think I've had them for like 5 years. I was just trying to remember. I'm like, did I get those pre-COVID? I think I did. So
Well, it would probably be about 3.
Okay. David Adler reached out to me like right after you guys started. So, I mean, I got some of the first ones that hit the market.
Yep.
And yeah,
it could be 3 or 4, but yeah.
So probably, yeah. So it must have been post-COVID. So must have been right. Yeah.
No, guys, it was. We met and it wasn't COVID, so it had to be pre-COVID.
No, well, when we met, I'd been using your product for years.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know. But how many?
So whenever David started, because he reached out to me right after he started working with you as a consultant, I think, before he went work full time. And so it was very early in the process.
And they're still good, right?
They're still good. Now, are they machine washable? Because I've never washed mine, and so I put them outside to air out now because they are getting a little smelly. So I was happy to get some new ones.
What I would do is just ever so often just wipe off the surface with a damp cloth.
Okay.
And that'll recharge the stick nature of them too. But so going back to this idea, do you find resistance? So I started this thinking all footwear brands, all of the big companies, they're talking about sustainability and trying to be cleaner and greener. And I thought, man, if I can make components and parts out of their foam, they are going to love me. Well, guess what? I'm out there. I present this to a bunch of shoe companies and they go, "Oh, we don't think you can make it." So I make an insole. Well, yeah, you can make an insole, but we have our supply chain and I don't know. And, how will it last? So you test it. Well, some other excuse. And then they say, well, yeah, but you can't make a midsole. So I go ahead and I make a midsole. And I don't know if you saw, but 2 days ago, we launched a midsole with Allbirds on their Remix collection. They've got a cruiser. And so the resistance is just more than you think. And it's really a resistance because these big brands are absolutely chained to their supply chain. The big brands don't really innovate. They basically go to Asia now, and their suppliers spend all the money on development and research, and those suppliers are very dependent upon making things the old way. I cannot understand why the industry would be throwing away 350,000 metric tons of foam that could make insoles and midsoles that are better than what they're making. There should be some place in every line for recycled insoles, whether it's in your casuals or some, we got our Flex line of slides, all recycled materials. So yeah, there's still that resistance. Even though I've been doing this nearly 50 years, I am still surprised. I remember on air shoes, people said, "Why would you put air in shoes? I mean, you're going to have a flat and a blowout. Ha, ha, ha. Who would want air in shoes?" yuck, 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 yuck. I don't know. I'm still surprised. I'm still surprised.
What you're talking about there is the fact that we have marketing agencies as shoe companies, and there is a complete disconnect from the manufacturing process. So the visibility or lack of visibility of actually what's going on and how to refine that process, it's completely broken when you talk about integrating that into the design process. But I want to talk about the cushioning. So some of our listeners are probably listening and going, Chris, why are you talking about a product that supplies cushion? I thought you're anti-cushion. And I do want to cover some context around this, because Stuart also talked about energy transfer. There is a couple things with cushion. Yes, I don't like cushion when it creates lack of stability. So when it's super cushiony and we can roll around and we lose that connection, that's one thing. But the energy transfer with this is absolutely phenomenal. And one of the issues with minimalist shoes, if you dive into the research though, is the fact that we spend so much time walking on unnatural surfaces like pavement, hardwood, so on. And that repeated impact can cause edema to the bone of the foot. This is a problem. So I have found this to be a solution, and they actually seem to make my shoes last longer from the distribution of wear. So I'm explaining, I'll let you dive into that further, but I just want to also tell an interesting story that I think you will appreciate, Stuart. And that is powerlifters, strength athletes, are known at times for this little hack of taking Loctite glue and spraying the inside of their shoe before they put their foot in there, so that you get this connection when you're going to compete and you're basically connected to the shoe, which is connected to the floor. Because inside of that, if not, you're sliding around inside the shoe. You're trying to do all this stuff to like have a great shoe and connection to the floor, but you're literally sliding around and losing power within it. And so when we're talking about energy transfer, grip, the other things, I'm just leading you a big segue here, but I also wanted to maybe cover some ground of some questions that people might have, thinking I'm promoting something outside of the scope that I normally would promote.
Well, we make insoles that have a lot of cushioning, right? 10 millimeters and so forth. But the insole that you like has about 3 millimeters of cushioning in the ball of the foot, or its thickness is 3 millimeters in the ball of the foot and about 4 in the heel. And so it's very minimal. And so you can't compress it very far. I would call it more shock dampening than cushioning, and a comfort feature for that. But the real feature that you like is this non-slip technology. We don't put a normal top cover on it. And I'm going to give you a visual. Is that all right?
Yep.
So
I love, by the way, that the not cushion, but shock absorption. That's a great way to put that.
Yeah. It's a dampening. So this is a normal sock. I know every magician has some trick, but this is a normal sock. It's a Drymax sock. A normal insole has a fabric top cover. Socks are fabric. We know that similar materials slide on one another, right? The reason your sock does not slide on your foot is that your skin has a different coefficient of friction than your sock. Okay, so if I'm here and my foot is here, and I start to run or take off, what happens? My foot slides back probably 1/4 of an inch. Now, if you slip 1/4 of an inch and you're running a mile, you lose 13 yards a mile.
That's pretty significant.
Yep. Well, try to win a race. Can you give up 13 yards a mile in a 10K? Okay. Now, why when you hike do you get black toenails? Because your foot is in here and it slides to the front. Now, everybody says, well, you put a thumbnail in front of your shoes, so put a thumbnail, which is more than 1/2 an inch, and figure out on your hiking boots how you end up jamming your toes. So you jam your toes because your foot is sliding. And again, you can't jam your toes running up down a trail if you're not sliding backwards too. But how about sideways? You see these athletes cutting and turning, and they're over the edge of their shoes. Or think about Zion Williamson blowing out his Nike. He didn't blow that out because he got to the edge of his shoe and stopped. His foot went whoop, clear over the edge because it slides. And then people put straps and laces and cable locks on the outside of their foot. It's like putting a seatbelt on the outside of your car. So I'm going to just take my fist, and you can do this when you get a pair. And if I take my normal insole, I slide. As hard as I hit that, I slide. Now I go over here where we've got the Blumaka Connect technology, no top cover. When I pull this down, I don't slide. And that keeps you centered over your shoe. Do you think slipping helps you? Just stand on grease or something. I mean, why would we put tread or rubber on a shoe if you wanted to slide? A professional sports team took our insoles. They could not have cared less whether they worked or not. 200 pro athletes, 8-month study. I couldn't afford to pay it. I never talked to them. They had no dog in the fight. They didn't care whether the results were good or bad. 90% of the athletes they tested ran faster when they were wearing our insoles. And 90% had a longer stride length. Why did they have a longer stride length? Because they weren't sliding back a quarter of an inch with every step. And 80% of the athletes had more stability. And again, I'm not a weightlifter, but they had more stability from the knee to the ground. Well, we know if you have more stability from knee to the ground, you're going to reduce your risk of injury. You're going to be operating inside your biomechanical window more frequently. And finally, 80% started and stopped faster. Now, when you're pushing on something or you're trying to cut or turn, you have to stop before you can cut or turn. Before you can move leverage to the weight or to a bat or to a golf club, you have to stop. And so this starting and stopping faster is absolutely critical to maintaining the kinetic chain and using maximum ground reaction force. It's that simple. Slipping is losing, stability is winning.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that is power transfer from the ground to distal end starts like that is a massive component. It's absolutely critical.
That's why a lot of people weightlift barefoot.
Yep. My big lifts, my 1,000-pound squat and deadlifts were done without shoes because I could. And I wanted to have that connection all the way.
Yeah, and think about slipping. If you've got 1,000 pounds, I can't even imagine. But if you got 1,000 pounds in there, a quarter inch of a slip is a big deal.
It's a very big deal.
And so what we're really doing is using your weight, your nature we're using gravity to hold you over the center of your shoe. And all of this notion that you've got to get seat belts on the outside of your shoe to hold you in place. I mean, you can't slide around inside your shoe and be stable. And yet every single person slides around inside their shoes. I invented this for trail running. I just couldn't. I said, why in the world am I getting black toes? Why is my ankle on side hills I'm shimmying over? Is my ankle going to go over or is my knee going to snap? And when you're thinking about gaining stability with each step on uneven surfaces, you slow down. You cannot move as quickly as you would when you're stable and secure. And right now we have over 750 professional athletes wearing our product, and we don't pay any of them to wear it. We have, as of last night, 11 NFL teams are purchasing the product. Every Major League Baseball team has players wearing the product. We have lacrosse teams wearing a product. We have soccer teams wearing it. but we're more well known with pro athletes than the general public.
So how are you going to go about fixing that issue?
Well, I talk to guys like you, and I like Anthony. I think he's an insole skeptic, and he gets a pair and he feels the difference. And so it's word of mouth. It's back to the old days of, one person tells one person tells one person, and it's really hard to tell people that it just doesn't sound credible, Chris, if I say, you know what, buy my insole and you're going to run faster. But it's true. But if I told you that and told you that on the street, you would be very skeptical, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And, if I didn't have the background that I did, like, oh, well, that means you're just not lacing your shoes up tight enough. Well, the tighter you make that seatbelt, then you're restricting the blood flow to that foot. It's not about like mummifying it. It does the opposite of what we want to have happen. It's the connection through to the ground.
Yeah, all the blood flows over your navicular, right? The top of your foot.
Mm-hmm.
And then you cinch down on your navicular where all of the blood goes right over the top of your instep. And then you think you're going to get performance that way. I mean, to me, this is a common sense solution. But, you get the word out one at a time. And, we're delighted. I woke up the other morning and the catcher for professional baseball team, he plays 2 orders. We've got one guy in the Dodgers. He's ordered 20 pair. I mean, players are the guy last week, the catcher, it was his 7th order in 4 years. So I love the fact that we're taking the problem of footwear pollution, trash, and turning it into a high performance product. I think, this idea that it's only the best for athletes and the planet. When have you ever been able to say that before? The best for athletes and the planet.
What is the difference environmentally, like the impact from producing one of your insoles to, producing a normal insole? Do you know that?
Well,
the actual ramifications?
Well, yeah, it depends on which way you want to go. But if you take our insole, the number one thing, the most sustainable product is the most durable product. So the fact that we can go 1,000 miles when other insoles won't even guarantee you 100 miles is incredible, right? So we know that you can go through 3 or 4 pair of shoes and still wear this product. That's really important, durability. So we guarantee 1,000 miles. I know of no other insole company that will put any cushioning guarantee on their insoles at all. The next thing, we use a tablespoon of water to make one of our products. Again, you can't get the other brands to tell you how much water they will use. The best knowledge I have, to make a midsole, most foam requires almost a gallon, and we require a tablespoon. That's 99% less water. Because 85% of the volume of this insole is recycled waste foam. If you were to make this out of virgin foam, you would need about 50% more new material, right? So we're saving that. We use less heat. We use less energy to make it. So our carbon footprint on an insole is 65% smaller than a typical polyurethane insole, and it's 27% smaller. And then you have the water benefit, you have the recycled benefit, you have the durability benefit. And you know what else? We're the same damn price as the insoles that they make that are environmental terrorism.
Well, that's some pretty striking numbers. Anthony, I'm wondering what questions you have. I've been kind of dominating the question front here.
No, this has been awesome learning for me, so I really appreciate it. But I always like to learn kind of about the science behind stuff, and you've answered a lot of that already. I've done some of the Posture Pro courses, and they talk about the Babinski reflex on the bottom of the foot. And I wonder, I've used their insoles before, and especially like for postural issues, they've helped. Would it make sense, or have you looked into using, like, say, that on the bottom and yours over top, so you're activating that reflex and you're still not getting that slip?
Well, I am not a doctor, and so we would love to partner with somebody that really knows, if you're trying to treat a medical condition or fix an issue, I would want to partner somebody that just has more knowledge of that than I do. We could do it. We would love to experiment with it if we could find somebody that wants to work with us on that. Even with Chris, Chris is he wants as little as possible.
Yeah.
There are, and I do think that, frankly, arch support stuff is oversold. I think that there's probably maybe 5 to 10% of the public that needs it. And so we accommodate them. Like, we've taken Chris's very thin insole and we've added an arch support to it, right? So, Chris's insole is very flexible all the way down. This has heel cupping, but under the calcaneus, we leave it, I don't know if you can see that, but we leave it soft.
Yeah.
And so even in a low profile product, we can add heel cup and a little bit of arch support. Let me see here if I
guess
have.
Go ahead. Maybe to explain it a little bit better is like if you think about that insole and kind of like dead center, the way theirs is set up, there's just this little bump and it's a thin insole. And I like the material of yours better. With that thin bump in there, what they're doing essentially is activating that reflex, and then that has an effect on the arch. It corrects the arch. And my understanding is when we think about like where we position ourselves in space and back pain and that kind of thing, we've got our convergence in our eyes, position of tongue in the roof of the mouth, and then arguably most importantly is going to be the way that weight's distributed on the feet. So I just wonder if there would be any value to having something like that in the middle of the arch where you can activate that reflex with the grip.
So that you're really talking about your metatarsal arch, right? Little right behind the metatarsal heads.
So like if this is my foot right in the middle, just that Babinski reflex.
Yeah. Oh, I would love to try it. I mean, we can design these anyway. When you sell them over the counter at a retail store, your number one priority is do the patient no harm, right?
Yeah.
And try to get as much accommodation as possible.
Yeah.
I just wanted to show you the arch support that we build in, right? So notice that under the calcaneus, we don't put any hard material.
Yeah.
And then back here, we have an Achilles notch. See that? God, why am I having a hard time with my camera? Achilles notch. And then, because I'm not a doctor and I don't want to lock your foot up, you see I have these relief points here and here so that you can't lock somebody completely up.
Nice.
And this is also recycled material, but that's what's inside here to reinforce it. I do like to cup the heel. I like to put if I can bring that heel fat pad back under the calcaneus, I like that for, sports where you're running or active.
Is that
for keeping that control of the position inside the shoe? Yeah.
Stability, and your shoe is made, if you look inside your shoe and you take your insole out, it's square. Your foot isn't square. So it's really filling that space more effectively in between the shoe and the insole. Because right now, if you just have a flat insole, your foot can spread out to the width of the shoe, and it allows you to move around more. And this sort of seats you and centers you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that talking about filling that space where the foot is not.
We make a rigid one and then we make it sort of a medium one. You ought to try one of those, Chris.
I'd love to. One of the biggest reasons people struggle with stability, balance, and force transfer isn't their strength, it's their footwear. You see, most modern shoes collapse the big toe, restrict that forefoot, and disconnect you from the ground. And that's why I helped co-found Barefoot Shoes and Boots. That allowed us to build them from the ground up to be anatomically shaped, with a wide toe box, zero heel raise, and a firm, stable platform that lets that tripod foot actually function. Your foot can't do its job when it's wrapped in a pillow. If you want your mechanics to work the way your anatomy was designed, take a look at barefoot.co. store. Again, that's BEAR. And we happen to be, I think, the only minimalist brand with a good touch of style. Yeah, when I talk about arch supports, it's just like generally, the same concept with resilience around, being, having our tissue actively be in that arch. There's always a time and place for everything, though. Just like I talk about, hey, if my elbow is sore, I might be putting an elbow wrap on it. It's just long term. That's not the solution to do all day, every day, because then I'm going to get weaker and I'm going to get reliant on it. And I'm going to have some compensatory patterns kick in because I'm literally relying on that and
that's exactly
counteracting
right.
elsewhere. Right. So it's when, to develop strength and active control of tissues, I don't want to rely on passively supporting it. Now, the cupping of the heel you're talking about is not talking about actively supporting that. That's talking about the shape of the heel and making sure the shape of the product fits the shape of a round heel. I'd love to try some of those.
Yeah, we'll get you some.
Yeah, I've been absolutely a big fan. It's really great learning more about the process and the impact on the environment as well. Let my hippie self kind of come out in regards to that. But it's huge when you talk about like a gallon of water being used for those other insoles versus a teaspoon, let alone the fact you're using recycled materials to begin with. Are you still getting, negative feedback around the feel of this? Because I love the feel of this texture. And I think you had talked originally that, some people didn't like that. And honestly, there's other insoles out there that have like a proprioceptive like needle point. And there's actually research around that, and it bring awareness to, the foot and the sensory and improving I don't want to dive into this because I'm not super educated on the science of that, but there's a bit of research around having some tactile feedback to the foot. Do you have any experience with that?
Well, I would say certainly there are a few people that don't like the feel of it, but I will tell you that is really not an issue for the professional athletes and what I would call the more knowledgeable. I think there's we have a softball team, a collegiate softball team. They've got 10 pitchers. Coach calls me and said, "Oh my gosh, 9 of our pitchers love your insoles. One hates it. She just does not like to be stuck to the ground. It just bugs her." Okay, and I think that's fine, but I do believe the human body is not meant to be on smooth, polished surfaces. Nothing in nature that I know of is smooth and polished. And so I think without building in nobules and proprioceptor trigger points, because every foot is different, I think that the fact that we have these little granules and that this thing is not perfectly smooth, it almost is smooth, but because there's these granules come in different shapes, it's not just this perfectly smooth, manicured astroturf. It is undulating and it has these different feels to it. I think that proprioception is good. The Chinese say health starts with the feet, and they're all about making sure that the feet have those points massaged or exercised. And so we think that the unevenness of our platform is similar to the ground and salubrious to health and a better way to do it. We didn't intend it. It's just a wonderful byproduct of our process. It was a happy coincidence.
I love the feel of it myself, and most everybody I know that wears like same thing. It's just, well, that was Anthony's experience as well.
Yeah, but we have kind of, when we put a top cover on it for the people that don't want the non-slip, they just want cushioning. You can sort of see it's never smooth, and some people will say, well, that's defective. So, on our top covers, we kind of hide it by putting I'll show you, we put a pattern on it like this that sort of masks the bumps, because they'll say, oh, mine is bumpy, and they'll think it's defective. So we've kind of hid it a little there, but here's what we did in a trail shoe with Rabbit, because they wanted to make sure the arch area here was not sticking. So we masked that off, and then they didn't want the toes. They wanted their arch to stick, but not their toes. And so we've put that right in a trail shoe, and that's getting good reviews. This Rabbit high country running shoe. So I'm really excited to see the things that we evolved to enhance the technology.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool to see how you guys are coming along. So it's
Do you always wear socks or no socks?
I usually wear socks. Just
Yeah.
yeah.
I was-
Is that do you have a recommendation with your product, or does it matter?
I absolutely socks. I mean, it's that changing of the coefficient of friction that really works well, and it also acts as a moisture wicking barrier. Yeah.
Yeah, the moisture wicking is like, if I don't wear socks, I'm going to get smelly, honestly. So
Yeah.
that's the main thing. My shoe will get smelly. And that's not what I'm looking for.
We need to make them as standard equipment in the barefoot, the shoes. That's what we need.
We do. Well, that is my only is I have to go.
Your square toe.
Yeah, our product is so wide. Like I order a pretty oversized one to trim down, which is nice that they're trimmable to fit. But that is one thing. Yeah, our profile is a lot wider than a standard running shoe.
Or we can make them that way for you, Chris.
Okay. We'll have to have some conversations there. It's absolutely a phenomenal combo. Like the barefoot shoe has the lowest durometer and greatest grip of any shoe out there. And then when you put that in there, the combo is just like, you're just connected like nothing else. It's just an amazing feel putting those two together. And like I said, it does help those minimalist shoes without creating an unstable, but helping absorb that impact component of it, because we're walking on surfaces that are not natural to begin with for the most part. Like concrete is not natural.
No, it gives you that dampening effect without being unstable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our energy return scores are good too. I mean, a lot of these foams, they're soft and they're cushioned, but you can't push off of them. And if you make a big old marshmallow pillow, that's the other thing. We're getting great cushioning scores, but great energy return scores, great resiliency scores.
Yeah.
And of course,
fantastic.
The other thing that we don't talk about with insoles, if an insole in a shoe is going to compress or fail within 25 miles, which virtually all do, it compresses by getting thinner, which also changes the internal volume of your shoe. So if your insole is 5 millimeters and it's going to compress to flat, you're going to be left with about 2.5 millimeters of material. That means the internal volume of your shoe is 2.5 millimeters more. So your fit issues and your instability issues and your slipping issues only increase as you break down your shoes.
And well, you're a shoe guy, so you know where I'm going with this, but shoe fitment is actually not the length, it's the girth. So your fit of the girth, and it's just basically around where the arch of the foot is. I always want to do this got girth shirt or some other play on this, because that is actually the fitment. And when the volume inside the shoe changes, like that is changing that circumference around that girth, and that's where the shoe should be fitting and holding at. And so that's the biggest impact on the shoe fit.
Well, Dr. Gray will tell you that the number one performance feature in a shoe is fit. If it doesn't fit, it's not going to fall. I was with a professional baseball team at spring training, and they were doing a bunch of stuff with their insoles in the lab. And after 3 days, they said, "Well, what have you observed?" And I said, "My observation is that half of your guys are wearing shoes that are the wrong size. And you guys have talked to me for 3 straight days about ground reaction force, efficiency of ground reaction force, energy return." And I said, if your feet are not in the right shoes, it's not going to happen. Based on that, they went out and bought a scanner. They called me 3 weeks later and said, Stuart, you were wrong. 60% of our guys are in shoes that are at least one size wrong. And 10% of those guys were in shoes that were 2 sizes wrong. And in this case, almost always they were too small because, as you say, people fit for length, but your foot is not a ruler, it's a barrel, and it's length and volume. And really the volume issue is what people miss. But can you imagine trying to, you have the barefoot shoe with the anatomical shape because you're trying to maximize ground force. Now, can you imagine wearing a shoe that's a size too small where your toes can't splay out? And this is one of 32 baseball teams where they measure everything. And yet the thing between the athlete and the ground, they don't control at all. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, immediately, as soon as you pull that big toe inward, or the pinky toe, the restriction of the blood flow starts happening, which is where we get essentially a lot of the atrophy and degradation of the tendon and ligament because of lack of blood flow. But it immediately also changes your muscle firing patterns, your ability to basically manage and control the hip, the knee, all that, and be able to transfer power. It has an immediate impact. And you can, our audience can test that themselves by getting in that squat position in a barefoot stance. Pull your big toe out and try to push your knee. Now grab your hand and push your knee in or pull it out while controlling it. Now take that big toe, pull it in or pull it in and raise it up, and now do the same test. And you'll find that it takes almost no pressure at all. And you can just push your leg over. Just go try it.
No, it's true. So I have a question for you. What do you think? Because the body knows when it's slipping, right, Chris?
Yep.
And while you're in these micro moves, if you're trying to rebalance your foot because it's slipping, and every time you slip, your body's trying to rebalance it, those proprioceptors are fire. Aren't we having a similar effect if your foot is slipping in that shoe where you're grabbing and it's using energy instead of hitting a ball or running or whatever, it's trying to center itself, right? There's got to be some neuromuscular thing going on.
It dampens your power output.
There you go. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and we design the same things into, like vehicle systems, the traction control. And to keep you, when you're unstable, when you've got slipping going on, we detune the engine. We retard the timing, we reduce the shift patterns to protect the vehicle. And that's a copy of what our bodies do. This is why if you're moving poorly, you end up starting getting limitation on mobility. And over time, then you lose mobility around joints because the body's trying to protect that joint. I don't know particulars. I haven't been able to create that for a study on slippage for the foot. But when just that impact of diaphragm to pelvis relationship and stable, take a good expansion of the diaphragm. When I test and I do just cueing with an athlete and make those changes, it's about a 15% increase in velocity output change.
Well,
the body
just
senses
my
instability in the core and detunes. It's just like that. Boom. All of a sudden you're lifting 10%, 15% detuned. That is a neuromuscular inhibition system that protects us. It's the same system. People think I'm making things up. When your hand starts slipping, that's to prevent us from climbing up a tree if we're getting fatigued to be able to do that. If your grip is slipping, your power output is reduced. These are simple systems.
Dampening power output. Chris Duffin. I'm stealing it.
Go for it.
I have a question for you then. You said you believe that the Blumaka Insoles increase your shoe life. My son, who's run 17 years in a row without missing a day, he says that. He says a normal running shoe he gets 200 miles out of before he has to change. When he puts the Blumaka Insoles, he gets 300 miles. But other than why do you think that's happening? What's going on there? Because you said that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did say that. It seems to improve the wear pattern of the shoe. So you've got these points that are just wearing out a lot faster. So you're getting either that impact or friction. I'm not sure what, but as a whole, that distribution and probably, again, that, dampening of the shock potentially. I'm not sure the exact mechanisms, but to me, it appears that the shoe wears more evenly and lasts longer as a result of distributing that load and wear. And that's just me observation. I don't have any data around that.
I guess the whole thing of slipping, I mean, I just had a biomechanics student. He's a PhD candidate, Division I golfer. He measured 100 swings with every club in his bag prior to having Blumaka Insoles, and 100 swings on the golf course with every club in his bag. Electronically GPS measuring every shot on a golf course 100 times with and without Blumaka. He bought our insoles. He didn't tell us he was doing the test. He sees his distance on the golf course go up 9% on his driver and 7% on his 3-wood. So his driver went from 296 average prior to putting in Blumaka insoles to 324.
That almost matches the numbers that I was saying for velocity increases with a bar, does it not?
And that's why I brought it up, because it's 9%. You said 10%, and yep. It would be really fun to see the difference in power output with and without the insoles, sort of in a blind test. Because I mean, this kid, he's a PhD biomechanist. Can you imagine going out and getting 100 golf swings on a golf course with every club in your bag and measuring them with GPS and then buying the insoles? He heard about us, by the way, on a podcast. Professional baseball coach Donnie Eckert was talking about the effect of maintaining the kinetic chain, increased ground reaction force. And that's why this kid bought them. But I mean, that's a lot of distance for a golfer.
Is.
Now, he's a good golfer, but when you pick up 25 yards on a 294-yard average drive, that's damn impressive.
Yep.
So you think you're getting more power out of when you wear your shoes with Blumaka, you get more power.
Yes. Well, that's the whole reason I went from wearing shoes to wearing barefoot, like that whole concept. And that's why you saw that I did my lifting. My big lifts were literally everything removed, because when I started that, barefoot shoes didn't exist. When I did those, Blumaka didn't exist, but I was maximizing my power output because that interface slowed me down when I had slippage.
Would you ever lift weights in shoes without Blumaka now?
Well, I don't really lift heavy anymore, so I'm kind of past that phase. Most of the stuff I do is just kind of body weight and pretty light. But to answer your question, I would not. Like, if I had to wear shoes and I was going for a maximal lift, I would have my barefoot shoes and I would have my Blumaka insoles, just hands down.
We see NFL and training facilities now, if they're trying to get an athlete ready for the NFL Combine, some of these performance gyms are now, the first thing they do is tell the athlete to get in. I mean, basically, they sell them a pair of Blumaka insoles as part of their entry package, because they want to prove to the athlete that they're increasing their performance. And I think there's one gym in Denver where nearly every one of the gym records has been set, personal bests have been set in Blumaka.
Yep.
So we're seeing the trainers, I think they're more attuned to this than many other people. And we're seeing gyms and trainers, because they're so attuned to perform. We have a Diamond Elite, which is a pitching academy by Mike Williams out in South Carolina. I think only half jokingly says, if you're going to pitch in my gym, if I'm going to teach you to pitch a baseball, you're going to wear Blumaka, because it's just, you're making my job easier.
Yeah. Well, you're seeing that is like when I had my last company, I penetrated sports performance really fast, because the people that understand those mechanisms, like they're going to adopt it. And that's what, like, I worked with every single Major League Baseball team. Like, the general public, way, way, way far behind. Like, it was professional sports first, collegiate behind that. Then you're getting, again, some of the, the high-end physical therapy, rehab, training centers, and it's just this cascade that direction. Because it comes down to
giving me much
education.
hope for how quick this goes, Chris.
If you figure out another method, call me up and let me know for when I take another run at it. Because as you know, there's actually not that many pro sports athletes, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's so amazing!" And like, yeah, it's amazing to reference, but it's like
can't make a living.
Exactly. I'm like, that was a few sales. Like, I've got all of these logos of teams I work with, but it's not that much product.
Yeah, well, I wish I knew how to communicate with more of the trainers, because I think it would make their gyms safer. I think it would help their athletes perform better. I mean, look, if a pro sports franchise knows that 90% of the athletes, 200 pro athletes ran faster. I mean, it's not like you're taking some Stuart Jenkins off the street and having them run a 100-yard dash or something. I mean, these are pro athletes that are in shape, and 90% of them ran faster. I mean, imagine.
Well, hopefully we can help with this conversation. I'd love to help continue to have you grow with this. It's really great what you're doing for both athletes and the environment. So we're making people more resilient, but we're making the world more resilient. And I think that is a great way to wrap up this really fun call. Do you got any last words of where people can find you? Blumaka,
Blumaka, blumaka.com. It's BLUMAKA. Blumaka, by the way, means blue for blue skies, blue water, cleaner planet. And the word Maka is the Native American word in Nebraska for earth. So it's blue earth is the meaning of our name. And really, my final thing is, don't compromise on your athletic performance or the planet. You can have both. And so we feel like our priority is only the best for the athlete and the planet. That's what we're trying to do. And we just hope everybody out there competes more efficiently and more safely and gets their personal best. I mean, that's what it's all about every day.
Love it. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us today.
Yeah, well, I hope I see you in Portland maybe next week. We're going to be up there. So.
Oh, absolutely.
At the materials show. So come and stop by.
Will do.
All right.
Really
nice to meet you, Anthony. Pleasure.